Precepts. By observing precepts, not only do you cultivate your moral strength, but you also perform the highest service to your fellow beings to live in peace. Every country or society has its code of what is considered to be moral within its own social context. These codes are often linked to the society's interest and its legal system. An action is considered right so long as it does not break the law and transgress public or individual sensitivities. These social codes are flexible and amended from time to suit changing circumstances. Important as they are to society, these standards cannot serve as a reliable guide to some absolute principles of morality which can be applied universally and for all time. By contrast, the Buddhist code of morality is not the invention of human minds. They are not based on tribal ethics which were eventually replaced by humanistic codes which are commonly practiced today. Buddhist morality is based on the universal law of cause and effect, karma, and considers a good or bad action in terms of the manner it affects oneself and others. An action, even if it brings benefit to oneself, cannot be considered a good action if it causes physical and mental pain to another being. Buddhist morality addresses a very common, yet crucial question: how can we judge if an action is good or bad? The answer, according to Buddhism, is a simple one. The quality of an action hinges on the intention or motivation, cetana, from which it originates. If a person performs an action out of greed, hatred, and delusion, his action is considered to be unwholesome. On the other hand, if he performs an action out of love, charity, and wisdom, his action is a wholesome one. Greed, hatred, and delusion are known as the three evil roots, while love, charity, and wisdom as the three beneficial roots. The word root refers to the intention from which an action originates. Therefore, no matter how a person tries to disguise the nature of an action, the truth can be found by examining thoughts which gave rise to that action, because the mind is the source of all speech and action. In Buddhism, a person's first duty is to cleanse him or herself of the mental defilements of greed, hatred, and ignorance. The reason for doing this is not because of fear or desire to please some divine beings, because if it were so, a person would be considered to be still lacking in wisdom. He or she would be only acting out of fear, like the little child who behaves well because he or she is afraid of being punished for being naughty. Buddhists should act out of understanding and wisdom. They perform wholesome deeds because they realize that by so doing they develop their moral strength, which provides the foundation for spiritual growth, leading to liberation. In addition, they realize that their happiness and suffering are self-created through the operation of the law of karma. To minimize the occurrence of troubles and problems in their lives, they make the effort to refrain from doing evil. They perform good actions because they know that these will bring them peace and happiness. Since everyone seeks happiness in life, and since it is possible for each individual to provide the condition for happiness, then there is every reason to do good and avoid evil. Furthermore, the uprooting of mental defilements, the source of all antisocial acts, will bring great benefits to others in society. Therefore, in helping oneself spiritually, one helps others to live peacefully. 5 Precepts. Lay Buddhist morality is embodied in the 5 precepts, which may be considered at 2 levels. First, it enables people to live together in civilized communities with mutual trust and respect. Second, it is the starting point for the spiritual journey towards liberation. Unlike commandments, which are supposedly divine laws imposed on people, precepts are accepted voluntarily by the people. especially when they realize the usefulness of adopting some training rules for disciplining the body, speech and mind. Understanding, rather than fear of punishment, is the reason for following the precepts. Good Buddhists should remind themselves to follow the 5 precepts daily. They are: I take the training precept to refrain from 1. Killing living creatures. 2. Taking what is not given. 3. Sexual misconduct. 4. False speech. 5. Taking intoxicating drugs and liquor. Besides understanding the 5 precepts merely as a set of rules of abstention, Buddhists should remind themselves that through the precepts they practice the 5 ennoblers as well. While the 5 precepts tell them what not to do, the 5 ennoblers tell them which qualities to cultivate, namely, loving kindness, renunciation, contentment, truthfulness, and mindfulness. When people observe the first precept of not killing, they control their hatred and cultivate loving kindness. In the second precept, they control their greed and cultivate their renunciation or non-attachment. They control sensual lust and cultivate their contentment in the third precept. In the fourth precept, they abstain from false speech and cultivate truthfulness, while they abstain from unwholesome mental excitement and develop mindfulness through the fifth precept. Therefore, when they understand the ennoblers, they will realize that the observance of the 5 precepts does not cause them to be withdrawn, self-critical and negative, but to be positive personalities filled with love and care, as well as other qualities accruing to one who leads a moral life. The precepts form the basis of practice in Buddhism. The purpose is to eliminate crude passions that are expressed through thought, word and deed. The precepts are also an indispensable basis for people who wish to cultivate their minds. Without some basic moral code, the power of meditation can often be applied for some wrong and selfish ends. 8 Precepts *. In many Buddhist countries, it is customary among the devotees to observe the 8 precepts on certain days of the month, such as the full moon and new moon days. These devotees will come to the temple early in the morning and spend 24 hours there, observing the precepts. By observing the 8 precepts, they cut themselves off from their daily life, which is beset with material and sensual demands. The purpose of observing the 8 precepts is to develop relaxation and tranquility, to train the mind, and to develop oneself spiritually. During this period of observing the precepts, devotees spend their time reading religious books, listening to the teachings of the Buddha, meditating, and also helping with the religious activities of the temple. The following morning, they revert from the 8 precepts to the 5 precepts intended for daily observance, and return home to resume their normal life. The 8 precepts are to abstain from 1. Killing. 2. Stealing. 3. Sexual acts. 4. Lying. 5. Taking intoxicants. 6. Taking food after noonday. 7. Dancing, singing, music, unseemly shows, the use of garlands, perfumes, and things that tend to beautify and adorn the person, and 8. Using high and luxurious seats *. Some people find it hard to understand the significance of a few of these precepts. They think that Buddhists are against dancing, singing, music, the cinema, perfume, ornaments and luxurious things. There is no rule in Buddhism which states that lay Buddhists must abstain from these things. The people who choose to abstain from these entertainments are devout Buddhists who observe the precepts only for a short period as a way of self-discipline. The reason for keeping away from these entertainments and ornamentations is to calm down the senses even for a few hours and to train the mind so as not to be enslaved to sensual pleasures. It helps one to realize that these adornments only increase one's belief in a permanent self or ego. They increase the passions of the mind and arouse emotions which hinder spiritual development. By occasionally restraining themselves, people will make progress towards overcoming their weaknesses and exercise greater control over themselves. However, Buddhists do not condemn these entertainments as wrong things. It is important for us to appreciate that the practice of these precepts are taken, not out of fear of transgression, but out of the understanding that they are beneficial for us to be humble and to lead a simple lives. Observance of precepts, both the 5 and 8 precepts, when performed with an earnest and willing mind is certainly a meritorious act. It brings great benefits to this life and the lives hereafter, especially in developing the wisdom to see things as they really are. Therefore, people should try their best to observe the precepts with understanding and as often as they can. Loving kindness. Loving kindness or compassionate love purify the mind, and the mind becomes a very energetic force to radiate for the well-being of others. In the world today, there is sufficient material wealth and intellectual development. Although we must admit that it is unevenly distributed, we certainly have an adequate supply of advanced intellectuals. Brilliant writers, talented speakers, philosophers, psychologists, scientists, religious advisors, wonderful poets, and powerful world leaders. In spite of these intellectuals, there is no real peace and security in the world today. Something must be lacking. What is lacking is spirituality and loving kindness or goodwill amongst mankind. Material gain in itself can never bring lasting happiness and peace. Peace must first be established in our own hearts before we can bring peace to others and to the world at large. The real way to achieve peace is to follow the advice given by the Buddha. In order to practice loving kindness, one must first practice the noble principle of nonviolence and must always be ready to overcome selfishness and to show the correct path to others. The struggle is not to be done by torturing the physical body, because wickedness is not in our body but in the mind. Nonviolence is a more effective weapon to fight against evil than retaliation. The very nature of retaliation is to increase wickedness. In order to practice loving kindness, one must also be free from selfishness. Much of the love in this world is self-centered, which means only a love of one's own self or seeking to benefit one's own self. Not out of love is the husband loved, but the husband is loved for love of self. Children are loved by the parents, not out of love for the children, but for love of self. The gods are loved, not out of love for the gods, but for love for self. Not out of love is anybody loved, but for love of self are they loved. The Buddha teaches another kind of love. According to the Buddha, we should learn how to practice selfless love to maintain real peace while at the same time working for our own salvation. This is called altruistic love, where a self that does the loving is not identified. Just as suicide kills physically, selfishness kills spiritual progress. Loving kindness in Buddhism is neither emotional or selfish. It is loving kindness that radiates through the purified mind after eradicating hatred, jealousy, cruelty, enmity, and grudges. According to the Buddha, metta-loving kindness is the most effective method to maintain purity of mind and to purify the mentally polluted atmosphere. This is the kind of love a bodhisattva practices. The love of a Buddha or an arahant is pure because it cannot differentiate between that which is loved and that which loves. The word love is used to cover a very wide range of emotions human beings experience. Buddhists differentiate between prema selfish love and karuna or metta, which is pure altruistic love. Emphasis on the base animal lust of one sex for another or between beings of the same sex has much debased the concept of a feeling of amity towards another being. According to Buddhism, there are many types of emotions, all of which come under the general term love. First of all, there is selfish love and there is selfless love. One has selfish love when one is concerned only with the satisfaction to be derived for oneself without any consideration for the partner's needs or feelings. Jealousy is usually a symptom of selfish love. Selfless love, on the other hand, is felt when one person surrenders his or her whole being for the good of another. Parents feel such love for their children. Usually human beings feel a mixture of both selfless and selfish love in their relationships with each other. For example, while parents make enormous sacrifices for their children, they usually expect something in return, so that there is both selfishness and selflessness. Another kind of love, but closely related to the above, is fraternal love or the love between friends, what we call maitri or mitra. In a sense, this kind of love can also be considered selfish because the love is limited to particular people and does not encompass others. In another category we have sexual love, where partners are drawn towards each other through physical attraction. It is the kind that is most exploited by modern entertainment, and it can cover anything from uncomplicated teenage infatuations to the most complex of relationships between adults. On a scale far higher than these, is universal love, also called metta. This all-embracing love for all sentient beings is the great virtue expressed by the Buddha. Lord Buddha, for example, renounced his kingdom, family, and pleasures so that he could strive to find a way to release mankind from an existence of suffering. In order to gain his enlightenment, he had to struggle for many countless lives. A lesser being would have been disheartened, but not the Buddha elect. It is for this he is called the Compassionate One. The Buddha's boundless love extended not only to human beings but all living creatures. It was not emotional or selfish, but a love without frontiers, without discrimination. Unlike the other kinds of love, universal love can never end in disappointment or frustration because it expects no reward and does not even identify the one who loves. It creates more happiness and satisfaction. Those who cultivate universal love will also cultivate sympathetic joy and equanimity, and they will then have attained to the sublime state. In his book, Tihi Buddha's Ancient Path, Venerable Piyadasi says, "Love is an active force. Every act of the loving one is done with the stainless mind to help, to succor, to cheer, to make the paths of others easier, smoother, and more adapted to the conquest of sorrow, the winning of the highest bliss." The way to develop love is through thinking out the evils of hate, and the advantages of non-hate, through thinking out according to actuality. According to karma, that really there is none to hate, that hate is a foolish way of feeling which breeds more and more darkness, that obstructs right understanding. Hate restricts, love releases. Hatred strangles, love enfranchises. Hatred brings remorse, love brings peace. Hatred agitates, love quietens, stills, calms. Hatred divides, love unites. Hatred hardens, love softens. Hatred hinders, love helps. And thus through a correct study and appreciation of the effects of hatred and the benefits of love, should one develop love. In the Metta Sutra, the Buddha has expounded the nature of love in Buddhism. Just as a mother would protect her only child even at the risk of her own life, even so, let one cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let his thoughts of boundless love pervade the whole world, above, below and across without any obstruction, without any hatred, without any enmity. If our enemies point out our mistakes and weaknesses, we must be grateful to them. Real charity. We perform real charity if we can give freely without expecting anything in return in order to reduce our selfish desires. The essence of true charity is to give something without expecting anything in return for the gift. If a person expects some material benefit to arise from the gift, he or she is only performing an act of bartering and not charity. A charitable person should not make other people feel indebted or use charity as a way of exercising control over them. One should not even expect others to be grateful, for most people are forgetful and not necessarily ungrateful. The act of true charity is wholesome, has no strings attached, and leaves both the giver and the recipient free from obligation. The meritorious deed of charity is highly praised in every religion. Those who have enough to maintain themselves should think of others and extend their generosity to deserving cases. Among people who practice charity, there are some who give as a means of attracting others into their religion or politics. Such an act of giving which is performed with the ulterior motive of conversion cannot really be said to be true charity. Those who are on their way to spiritual growth must try to reduce their own selfishness and strong desire for acquiring more and more. They should reduce their strong attachment to possessions which, if they are not mindful, can enslave them to greed. What they own or have should instead be used for the benefit and happiness of others, their loved ones as well as those who need help. When giving, they should not perform charity as an act of their body alone, but with their heart and mind as well. There must be joy in every act of giving. A distinction can be made between giving as a normal act of generosity and dana. In the normal act of generosity we must give out of compassion and kindness when we realize that someone else is in need of help, and we are in the position to offer that help. When we perform dana, we give as a means of cultivating charity as a virtue and of reducing selfishness and craving. More importantly, dana is given with understanding, meaning that one gives to reduce and eradicate the idea of self which is the cause of greed, acquisitiveness, and suffering. One exercises wisdom when one recalls that dana is a very important quality to be practiced by every Buddhist, and is the first perfection, paramita, practiced by the Buddha in many of his previous births before his enlightenment. A person also performs dana in appreciation of the great qualities and virtues of the Triple Gem. There are many things which we can give. We can give material things, food for the hungry, and money and clothes to the poor. We can also give our knowledge, skill, time, energy, or effort to projects that can benefit others. We can provide a sympathetic ear and good counsel to a friend in trouble. We can restrain ourselves from killing other beings, and by so doing perform a gift of life to the helpless beings which would have otherwise been killed. We can also give a part of our body for the sake of others, such as donating blood, eyes, kidney, heart, etc. Some who seek to practice this virtue or are moved by great compassion or concern for others may also be prepared to sacrifice their own lives. In his previous births, the Bodhisattva had many a time given away parts of his body for the sake of others. He also sacrificed his life for the sake of others and to restore the others' lives, so great was his generosity and compassion. But the greatest testimony to the Buddha's great compassion is his priceless gift to humanity, the Dharma, which can liberate all beings from suffering. To the Buddhist, the highest gift of all is the gift of Dharma. This gift has great powers to change a life. When people receive the Dharma with a pure mind and practice the truth with earnestness, they cannot fail to change. They will experience greater happiness, peace, and joy in their heart and mind. If they were once cruel, they become compassionate. If they were once revengeful, they become forgiving. Through Dharma, the hateful becomes more compassionate, the greedy more generous, and the restless more serene. When a person has tasted Dharma, not only will happiness be experienced here and now, but also in the lives hereafter. Buddhist attitude towards human organ donations. From the Buddhist point of view, the donation of organs after one's death for the purpose of restoring the life of another human being clearly constitutes an act of charity which forms the basis or foundation of a spiritual or religious way of life. Dana is the Pali term in Buddhism for charity or generosity. The perfection of this virtue consists of its practice in three ways, namely: 1. The giving or sharing of material things or worldly possessions. 2. The offering of one's own bodily organs, and 3. The offering of one's services for a worthy cause to save the life even at the risk of sacrificing one's own life for the well-being and happiness of others in need. It is through such acts of charity that one is able to reduce one's own selfish motives from the mind and begin to develop and cultivate the great virtues of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom. The teaching of the Buddha is for the purpose of reducing suffering here and now, and to pave the way for the complete cessation of all forms of suffering. The fear to participate in a noble act such as that of organ donation lies primarily in a lack of understanding of the real nature of existence. There are some people who believe that when any part of their body or organ is removed, they will have to go without that organ in their next life, or that they will not be eligible to enter the kingdom of heaven. There is no rational basis to such ideas. From the Buddhist point of view, death takes place when one's consciousness leaves the disintegrating material body. And it is that relinging of consciousness which determines one's next life. Some religionists may call this relinging consciousness a soul, while others may call it spirit or mental energy. Whatever term is used, it is clear that it has nothing to do with material components of the body which are subject to and which return to their respective sources of energy. The earth element returns to the soil. The water element returns to the streams, and the heat and elements return to the atmosphere. No matter how well the body is preserved, whether in a metal or wooden coffin, decomposition of the body is inevitable. It is only the consciousness which goes on to the new rebirth. Instead of allowing the organ to rot away and go to waste. Today's technology and surgical methods have enabled their component structures such as the heart and other organs to be used or transplant to restore life. With the ever-increasing number of organ failure occurring in the country, the time has come for our more understanding members of the public to come forward and volunteer to donate their organs after their death for a worthy cause. It is the duty of all understanding people to join in this noble cause to help to alleviate suffering humanity. Some time ago there was a car sticker which said, "Leave your organs behind, God known we need them here." The Buddhist attitude to animal life. If we believe that animals were created by someone for the benefit of men, it would follow that men were also created for animals, since some animals do eat human flesh as part of their nature. Animals are said to be conscious only of the present. They live with no concern for the past or future. It is like little children who seem to have no notion of the future. They also live in the present until their faculties of memory and imagination are developed. Self-consciousness is a faculty which comes with maturity. Human beings possess the faculty of reasoning. The gap between human being and animal widens only to the extent that we develop our reasoning faculty and act accordingly. Buddhists accept that animals not only possess instinctive power but also, to a lesser degree, thinking power. But they can use their instinct from birth only to find their food, shelter, protection, and sensual pleasure. In some respects, animals are superior to human beings. Dogs have a keener sense of hearing and smelling, insects have a keener sense of smell. Hawks are speedier, eagles can see a greater distance. Undoubtedly, we are wiser, but we have so much to learn from the ants and bees. Much of the animal is still in us. But we also have much more. We have the potential for spiritual development. Buddhism cannot accept that animals were created by someone to benefit human beings. If animals were created for them, then it could follow that human beings were also created for animals, since there are some animals which eat human flesh because it is in their nature to eat the flesh of living beings. Buddhists are encouraged to love all living beings and not to restrict their concern only for the welfare of human beings. They should practice loving kindness towards every living being. The Buddha's advice is that it is not right for us to take away the life of any living being, since every living being has a right to exist. Animals also have fear and pain as do human beings. It is wrong to take away their lives or hurt them or instill fear in them. We should not misuse our intelligence and strength to destroy animals, even though they may sometimes be perceived as a nuisance to us. Animals need our sympathy. Destroying them is not the only way to get rid of them. Every living being is contributing something to maintain this world. It is unfair for us to deprive their living rights. In his Handbook of Reason, D. Runes says, "We can hardly speak of morals in relation to creatures we systematically devour, mostly singed but sometimes raw. There are men and women who practice horse love, dog love, cat love, bird love. But these very same people would take a deer or a calf by its neck, slit its throat, drink the blood straight away or in a pudding, and bite off the flesh. And who is to say that a horse they cherish is nobler than a deer they feed on? Indeed, there are people who eat cats, dogs, and horses but would use a cow only as a work animal and the dogs to protect them and their properties. Some cry over a little bird or goldfish that expired. Others travel long distances to catch fish on a nasty hook for food or mere pleasure, or to shoot birds for fun. Some go into deep jungle and to other countries for hunting animals as game, while others spend a lot to keep the same animals at home as their pets. Some keep frogs to foretell the weather, others cut off their legs and fry them. Some tenderly tend birds in gilded cages, others serve them for breakfast. It is all quite confusing. Every religion advises us to love our fellow humans. Some even teach us to love them more if they belong to the same religion. But Buddhism is supreme in that it teaches us to show equal care and compassion for each and every creature in the universe. The destruction of any creature represents a disturbance of the universal order. The Buddha was very clear in his teachings against any form of cruelty to any living being. One day the Buddha saw a man preparing to make an animal sacrifice. On being asked why he was going to kill innocent animals, the man replied that it was because it would please the gods. The Buddha then offered himself as the sacrifice, saying that if the life of an animal would please the gods, then the life of a human being, more valuable, should please the gods even more. Needless to say, the man was so moved by the Buddha's practical gesture that he gave up the animal sacrifice and accepted the Buddha's teaching. Human cruelty towards animals is another expression of our uncontrolled greed. Today we destroy animals and deprive them of their natural rights for our convenience. But we are already beginning to pay the price for this selfish and cruel act. Our environment is threatened, and if we do not take stern measures for the survival of other creatures, our own existence on this earth may not be guaranteed. It is true that the existence of certain creatures is a threat to human existence. But we never consider that human beings are the greatest threat to every living being on this earth, in the water and in the air, whereas the existence of other creatures is a threat only to certain living beings, and even so, they do not pose a threat of extinction, because they take only enough to survive, never for pleasure or uncontrolled greed. Since every creature contributes something for the maintenance of the planet and atmosphere, destroying them is not the solution to overcome our problems and needs. We should take other measures to maintain the balance of nature. The need for tolerance today. If a person foolishly does me wrong, I will return to him the protection of my boundless love. The more evil that comes from him, the more good will go from me. I will always give off only the fragrance of goodness. Buddha. People today are restless, weary, filled with fear and discontentment. They are intoxicated with the desire to gain fame, wealth, and power. They crave for gratification of the senses. People are passing their days in fear, suspicion, and insecurity. In this time of turmoil and crisis, it becomes difficult for people to coexist peacefully with their fellow beings. There is therefore a great need for tolerance and understanding in the world, so that peaceful coexistence among the people of the world can be possible. The world has bled and suffered from the disease of dogmatism and of intolerance. The soil of many countries today is soaked with the blood spilled on the altar of various political struggles. As the skies of earlier millennia were covered with the smoke of burning martyrs of various faiths. Whether in religion or politics, people have been conscious of a mission to achieve power and have been aggressive towards other ways of life. Indeed, the intolerance of the crusading spirit has spoiled the records of religions. Let us look back at the past century of highly publicized progress, a century of gadgets and inventions. The array of new scientific and technical inventions is dazzling: telephones, electric motors, aeroplanes, radios, television, computers, spaceships, satellites, and electronic devices. Yet, in the same century, the children of the earth who have developed all these inventions as the ultimate in progress were the same people who butchered millions of others with bayonets or bullets or bombs. Amidst all the great progress, where did the spirit of tolerance stand? Where is the love that many religions preach? Today people are interested in exploring outer space, but they are totally unable to live as neighbors in peace and harmony on the earth. The fear that humans will eventually desecrate the moon and other planets is today very real. For the sake of material gain, modern people violate nature. Their mental activities are so preoccupied with satisfying their pleasure that they are unable to focus on or even understand the purpose of life. This unnatural behavior of present human beings is the result of their wrong conception of human life and its ultimate aim. We create more the frustration, fear, insecurity, intolerance, and violence. In fact, today intolerance is still practiced in the name of religion. People merely talk of religion and promise to provide shortcuts to paradise. They are not interested in practicing it. If Christians live by the Sermon on the Mount, if Buddhists follow the Noble Eightfold Path, if Muslims really follow the concept of brotherhood, and if the Hindus shape their life in oneness, definitely there will be peace and harmony in this world. In spite of these invaluable teachings of the great religious teachers, people have still not realized the value of tolerance. The intolerance that is practiced in the name of religion is most disgraceful and deplorable. The Buddha's advice is, let us live happily, not hating those who hate us. Among those who hate us, let us live free from hatred. Let us live happily and free from ailment. Let us live happily and be free from greed, among those who are greedy. Dhammapada 197, 200. Buddhist funeral rites. Proper Buddhist funeral practices are simple, solemn, and dignified religious services. As practiced in many Buddhist countries, a Buddhist funeral is a simple, solemn, and dignified service. Unfortunately, some people have included many unnecessary, extraneous items and superstitious practices into the funeral rites. The extraneous items and practices vary according to the traditions and customs of the people. Rituals were introduced in the past by people who could not understand the nature of life, nature of death, and what life would be after death. When such ideas were incorporated as so-called Buddhist practices, critics tended to condemn Buddhism for expensive and meaningless funeral rites. If they approach proper persons who have studied the real teachings of the Buddha and Buddhist tradition, they could receive advice on how to perform Buddhist funeral rites in the correct manner. It is most unfortunate that a bad impression has been created that Buddhism encourages people to waste their money and time on unnecessary rites and rituals. It must be clearly understood that Buddhism has nothing to do with such debased practices. Buddhists are not very particular regarding the burial or cremation of a dead body. In many Buddhist countries, cremation is customary. For hygienic and economic reasons, it is advisable to cremate. Today, the population in the world is increasing, and if we continue to have dead bodies occupying valuable land, then one day all remaining available land will be occupied by the dead and the living will have no place to live. There are still some people who object to the cremation of dead bodies. They say that cremation is against God's law, in the same way they have objected to many other things in the past. It will take some time for such people to understand that cremation is much more appropriate and convenient than burial. Besides, Buddhists do not believe that one day someone will come and awaken the departed person's spirits from their graveyards or give life to the ashes from their urns and decide who should go to heaven and who should go to hell. The consciousness or mental energy of the departed person has no connection with the body left behind or his or her skeleton or ashes. A dead body is simply the rotten old empty house which the departed person's life occupied. The Buddha called it a useless log. Many people believe that if the deceased is not given a proper burial or if a sanctified tombstone is not placed on the grave, then the soul of the deceased will wander to the four corners of the world and weep and wail and sometimes even return to disturb the relatives. Such a belief cannot be found anywhere in Buddhism. Some people believe that if the dead body or the ashes of the departed person is buried or enshrined in a particular place by spending a big amount of money, the departed person will be benefited. If we really want to honor a departed person, we must do some meritorious deeds such as giving some donations to deserving cases and charitable or religious activities in memory of the departed ones, and not by performing expensive rites and rituals. Buddhists believe that when a person dies, rebirth will take place somewhere else according to his or her good or bad actions. As long as a person possesses the craving for existence, that person must experience rebirth. Only the arahants, who have gone beyond all passions, will have no more rebirths, and so after their death, they will attain their final goal, nirvana.